Welcome to Obsessed with Success, starring Russel Morgan.
Hello and welcome to Obsessed with Success with Russel Morgan, the show where legal insight meets entrepreneurial passion. On this podcast, we go beyond the basics of legal practice to uncover the personal stories, strategic decisions, and bold moves that define today's most successful legal professionals. My name is Kevin Rosenquist, and as always, I am joined by Russel Morgan. Russell, it's so good to see you again.
Good to see you as well, Kevin.
So let's rewind to the early days of starting your firm. This always fascinates me when I hear stories of how people started. What were those first few months really like? Was it harder than expected? What surprised you?
You know what? I started my firm in a one-room shop, probably a 10 by 10 at best. And it's really ground up. And like any business, it's a lot of trial and error. Operations, for the most part, you are doing everything in the business itself.
Yeah.
You're doing intake, you're speaking to clients, you're doing the work itself. You are the marketing entity. You are the PR, you are the secretary. It gives you a very good fundamental understanding long-term of how to delegate, number one, and how to grow. Because unless you know how to serve every facet of your firm, how can you teach somebody else? Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, absolutely, there are trial and error, there are tribulations that you're going through. But on the other hand, when you start expanding and you start growing and you start taking on your first secretary and your first paralegal and then your first associate, every one of them needs to have SOPs. They have to have standards of procedure. So the initial work that you put in building your firm essentially gives you the groundwork of how to train your team, how to bring people into your firm. And without that initial experience, including the trial and error, I don't think I would be where I am now at the trajectory that we're moving at, because I've literally sat in every seat in our firm. So as much as I'd like to say that there were hard times, those were the times that really defined our firm and our practice. Surprising moments really have to be that, there's this old school mentality that you show up, you're a lawyer, you know everything, you're the best, and people need to come to you because you are the quote unquote person that knows best. The reality of today's market is the legal industry is a business, just like any other business. So there's a lot more time and effort that goes into building the business of practicing law, the advertising, the marketing, the actual exposure that you need to build a clientele base. Now, you can't have that be the end all be all, but you have to generate work. You have to keep the lights on. And just being an attorney, well, guess what? There's 1.2 million lawyers in the United States.
That's it.
33% of which, if not more, are in New York. We are in the most saturated market in the United States. So there has to be something about you that stands out, that attracts people, that makes you approachable. And that's where we built our market share. What separated us is the approachability, is the fact that you were able to speak to your lawyer when you needed to get to your lawyer. There, unfortunately, are thousands of firms out there that some cases never get to speak to a lawyer. You're dealing with a paralegal or you're dealing with a secretary. And that's where we separated ourselves. And that's where we are now. Client relations is one of the foundations of our firm from day one, and really remains to be one of the reasons why we are as successful as we are.
Yeah, it's any business, right? You got to take care of your clients. You got to take care of your customers.
Right.
Yeah. You had mentioned in our last episode that you have a very strong work ethic, and a lot of it came from your father, watching how he drove a taxi to support the family. You obviously worked your butt off. Was there ever a part when you first started, though, you were like a part of you when you first started where you were like, oh man, I don't know if I should do this. Maybe I should just work for somebody else, or were you just gung ho the whole time?
You know what? I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit.
Hmm.
It's never been in my. I don't think I have it in me to quit. And you have to have thick skin. You're
Hmm.
going to have bad days. You're going to have good days. And look, there's nothing wrong with working for someone else, but the latitude and the freedom that you're able to provide yourself, and that's the real reason why most people who go private, is you're able to build your own schedule. The problem is when you get to a point where you are unable to delegate, now you're kind of the opposite of what you started out to be, right?
Right.
Now you're back to square one.
Hmm.
So you have to do a real balancing act of making sure that you're attentive to all of your clients, but you're also able to delegate the tasks that, number one, should be outsourced. Number one, are beneficial to your client to be outsourced. Not everything should be billed at an attorney rate. There are certain things that really should be done by a legal secretary or a paralegal. So, of course, there were moments where, just like anybody, you want to give up and quit, but those are your defining times. Those are the days where you separate yourself from everybody else and you make the conscious decision to say, good, bad, or otherwise, consistency and persistence will get you to the top every time.
Many lawyers might think that they need everything to be perfect before launching. What's your take on that mindset? Is that the way to do it? And if not, what is essential in the beginning?
My opinion is what needs to be perfect is your practice, meaning your work product, your ethics, your obligations to your client. That's something that has to come above and beyond everything else. In terms of business, you're going to have trial and error. Again, we're in the business of practicing law. So there are going to be things that are never going to be perfect. The reason for that is the market is constantly changing on a
Hmm.
daily, on a monthly, on a yearly basis. It could be a new outbreak. It could be some sort of political issue that's going on. It could be war. It could be COVID, something that's going on in the world that affects your work product or affects your ability to communicate with your clients or affects your ability to come to the office. COVID
Hmm.
lockdown was a big shift for a lot of people. And if you didn't know how to operate, either you shut down or you grew and you understood how you needed to change what you're doing. So I think my opinion is you have to perfect your craft on a daily basis, whatever that craft is, whatever industry you're in. Your best version of yesterday is your starting point today. You're working off of your achievements yesterday, and they should only be getting bigger and better on a daily basis.
You've talked about four pillars that to success that you kind of live by. What are those pillars, and how do you feel that kind of just defines your road, if you will?
So our four pillars, really my four pillars of success, have always started with number one, authority. You have to solidify yourself as an authority in the field. And this is a combination of a lot of things. It's your advertising, your marketing, your public relations, it's public speaking, it's articles, it could be write ups in certain online or written newspapers, it could be publications that you're putting out there on the law journal, for example. Your authority in the field is part of what separates you from the pack. It's what gives your clients and your colleagues confidence in you as a professional. If you don't have the right branding, the right advertising in place, how are you driving traffic to your firm?
Hmm.
But again, paying for Google Ads isn't an end all,
Right.
right? Buying leads online is not an end all. It has to be a overall approach where you are not only marketing. Marketing is one part of authority building. You have to show the public that you have been acknowledged by other professionals. Other professionals have to be comfortable that when they send a referral over to you or they send a client over to you, that they're not going to be worried about whether you're going to do a good job or a bad job. So it's a combination of all of the above. Your public relations. Now, this can be anything from speaking engagements. It can be newscasts, broadcasts, podcasts. It's all of your presence, and it's more importantly accessibility, showing that you're available, showing that you're out there, showing where people can find you. If you are disorganized in your presence, it speaks volumes on your practice. So if people have a hard time finding you, why am I trusting you with my business? Why am I paying you money?
Yeah, I feel like that in a lot of different businesses. Like if I can't find a website, or they do have a website and it's really bad, like I don't know, I get nervous.
So that and that's part of the reason why I spend a tremendous time writing. We spend a tremendous time of just putting out blogs and articles and free resources where people can really just learn before they come to us. Because we want to make sure that even if you don't necessarily become a client, that you have gained some value add from interacting with my firm. And it could be something simple like a YouTube video, could be a blog that you found online or on our website. But that in itself builds authority. And for other practitioners out there, it gains you attention from major publications. You might get a call here and there from CNN or from Fox or from a paper that's publishing on a certain topic. Then they need an expert in the field. And the more they see that you are recognized by certain organizations, the more likely you are to gain their traffic. And that in itself builds authority with your clientele.
Mm-hmm.
So you're solidifying yourself as an authority in your field has to be one of your number one priorities. And this is something that we work on a daily basis. There are constant movements in the market. There are constant changes. Current events are changing on a daily basis, whether it's, a new political issue or, a Diddy trial, whatever the case is. You have to be able to show that if it's relevant to you, if it's something that you are a professional in, that you can contribute.
I like that. If that you can contribute. Let's do one more of your pillars. I'd love to get one more in if we can. The next one is operations. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So the second pillar to our success, or really to any successful practice, have to be operations. Your infrastructure is key. Once you get to a certain level, and again, that those levels vary, you have to make sure that each of your departments run smoothly without you present. So infrastructure inherently implies delegation, and delegation implies training. So the operations of your firm are what give you that ability to, number one, expand, grow your business, but most importantly, have a private life, have a social life, be able to spend time with your family, be able to spend time with friends. Unfortunately, and in some cases, I've seen colleagues, I've seen other people in the field that are putting in 16, 18-hour days. They have, a bustling practice, but they are wearing every hat. Mm-hmm. And part of that is people struggle giving up control. And sometimes it's for good reason. And that reason usually is quality control. People are afraid that if you let go, if you delegate, that the quality of your product will diminish, which in some cases, unfortunately, is in fact the outcome. But if your systems are in place, if your training is right, if your staffing is right, your hiring process, we're not taking random people off the street. We're not just implementing them on day one. we have to make sure that they're properly trained, that they're well educated in our systems, that they're experienced in the field. And that's what allows you to go department by department and make sure that your operations as a whole are functioning as a healthy business.
Okay. So let's think about the two pillars that you've given thus far. How did you land your first clients? Was it referrals, relationships? Was it marketing, part of pillar one, or something else entirely?
I think it was a combination.
Yeah.
When just like when you start any other business, you have to do what you have to do to get your name out there. And with limited budget, I started my firm with $500. We had very little money to work with on
It's not a
marketing
lot.
and advertising.
Not a lot.
In any time.
Yeah, right.
We barely had money to pay rent. So
Yeah.
you had to be really careful where you're placing your money. Some of it really was word of mouth. Some of it was referral business. But the beauty of delivering a solid service and delivering a solid product is word of mouth spreads. When you do right by your clients, they'll tell other people. And now, when you've landed your first will tell your second, and your second will tell your third. That in itself will allow you a little bit of money for advertising and marketing. And understand, advertising is not a perfect system. Marketing is not a perfect system. It's an ever-changing platform. Take Google, for example. Google has updates on a quarterly, if not monthly basis that in some cases completely changes their algorithm. And what worked for you in 2024 doesn't necessarily work for you in 2025.
Very much so.
And two, we also don't want to place all of our eggs in one basket. Someone's that's relying on, pay-per-click ads. Tomorrow, pay-per-click for your respective keyword goes from $100 a keyword to $500 a keyword. Now your cost per acquisition has quintupled. What do you do next? You haven't diversified. You haven't gone into public relations. Your personal network is not large enough. You haven't diversified your advertising. So what next? So it has to be a combination of all of the above, and it has to be worked on daily so that when one of your advertising machines needs some maintenance, that your business is able to be sustained by number 2, 3, and of course, most importantly, your referral business. And referrals can be a combination. Part of them really should come from your clients. If you're delivering good work, your clients should be spreading the word. The other part is you always have to expand your professional network. Some of your best referrals are going to come from your colleagues because one of your colleagues may not necessarily do what you do, and you may not necessarily do what they do.
Right.
But if you are delivering quality service and quality product, then there should be some business coming your way from the colleagues in your field.
Yeah, I would definitely, if I had a lawyer who did my estate planning and I needed a lawyer for something else, I would trust a referral from that lawyer if I had a good experience. So yeah, totally. Building that network and having those referrals, that's got to be huge for you guys.
Absolutely. And look, there are always situations where my job is to help people at the end of the day. I have done so much free work over my career, and a lot of that free work has materialized into referrals. You never know who you're going to help in this world and how that person is going to thank you. And a lot of the time, till this day, we're doing pro bono work. And it's not necessarily looking for a referral, but you're building rapport with your clients. You're building good faith. You're showing your community that it's not just a money grab for you, that you really are somebody who's here to help people. And that goes a long way. It goes a long way when you're starting out, and it goes a long way when you're successful, because you're not letting success change you. You're still staying humble. And that is another part of making sure that you're keeping your head to the ground. There is nothing wrong with doing free work. There's nothing wrong with volunteering. In fact, I implore it. It's something that everyone as a contributing member of society should be doing on a regular basis. Not because you have to, but because you should want to give back to your community. Your community is the reason why you're here. Your community is the reason you had the opportunities that you had, understanding that you worked for it, but for the people around you, you may not have been in the position of that you are in today. So it's extremely important. Give back when you can, give back when you can't, but regardless, make sure we're giving back.
All right, well, that's it for today's episode of Obsessed with Success. Russell, thank you very much for being so candid about the grind and the growth. I think it's really inspiring and certainly great pillars, great advice on how to start and to grow. You know, if you're out there and you're a lawyer thinking about your next move, this episode, think of it as your roadmap. It's come back to it multiple times if you need to. I think it's really good stuff. Subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who's building their own empire. I know that these words will definitely make an impact and help them along the way. Russell, so good to see you again. Thank you so much for being here.
Likewise, till next time on Obsessed with Success.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.